Welcome back to Psychology with Dipali, the best destination for great content in psychology.
Hello, everyone. Today we're going to talk about Carl Jung's analytic psychology and gain an insight into his theory of personality. So, the topics which we will be doing today are the collective unconscious, archetypes and its various forms, the Jungian concept of self, the process of individuation, personality types, extroversion and introversion, therapeutic techniques in Jungian psychology. So, let us start with the interesting question of the day. Today's question is about a person who was a motivational research expert who conducted research and helped market products using the principles and concepts of Carl Jung's theory. The advertising campaign of one particular product, which was developed on the basis of his research, not only increased the sales of that product, but is also the reason for the immense popularity of that product amongst children even till today. So, who is this person and which product sales did he influence? So, we'll know the answer as we go along. So, to start with, Carl Jung's theory is known as the analytical theory of psychology or analytical psychology, or even it's called as analytic psychology. Now, Carl Jung originally was a psychoanalytic theorist who was, along with Freud, talking about various concepts like the unconscious and the conscious and the preconscious. But later on, he developed his own theory and he split from the main psychoanalytic approach. According to him, he viewed the unconscious mind as something which is a reservoir of so many things which we cannot accept within ourselves. So he assumed that what Freud believed, that the personal unconscious is the only important thing for determining the personality of the person. He found that this was not wholly true. Though the personal unconscious was important, he felt that personality consisted of competing forces, that is, forces which are within the individual that must be balanced rather than forces within the individual and within the society. So, Freud basically conceptualized the theory of personality based on the competing balance which needed to be obtained by balancing the inner forces with the forces of society. But according to Carl Jung, it is more important to actually balance the forces and structures within the individual himself. So, what was his theory all about? He talked about the collective unconscious apart from the personal unconscious. Now, what is the collective unconscious? He called it a universal version of the personal unconscious, which means when I have a personal unconscious, that is something which is only specific to me. It contains all the instincts, desires, and demands which are only relevant to me. But the collective unconscious is something which is universal and it holds mental patterns or memory traces which are common to all of us, which means he's talking about the entire humanity. Now, the contents of the collective unconscious reflect the experiences as well as other happenings which have taken place with the species as such, which means just as we have experiences in our day-to-day life, when the human species originated, they also had certain experiences. So all these experiences which were collectively experienced by the beginning of the human species, from then on till today, these experiences are part of the collective unconscious. So, which means the collective unconscious holds all the experiences which are shared by all human beings, and these experiences are in kind of a biological heritage that we have inherited from our previous ancestors. So, it is a reservoir of everything which is common to all kinds of human experiences right from the beginnings of the origin of the species of humans on this earth. Now, in the collective unconscious, he talks about a very important concept which is called archetypes. Now, what are archetypes? Now, archetypes are innate. That means they are inborn. They are there within the individual. They are also hereditary and they are also universal, which means we are inheriting archetypes just as we inherit, let's say, genetic material from our parents. And these archetypes are universal, which means it's there in every human, and it shapes our experiences right from birth. Now, archetypes basically are emerging from the shared as well as inherited unconscious, that is the collective unconscious. So, a major part of the collective unconscious is consisting of these archetypes, which are innate, which are biological, and which are inherited, and of course, which are universal. Now, these archetypes, though they are there in our collective unconscious, they yet will express themselves. And when will they express themselves? They will express themselves when our mind is distracted. Either we are distracted with certain other thoughts, or when our mind is inactive. And that happens when we are dreaming. So, in dreams, there is a major portion of the expression of the archetypes. And even in kind of vivid imagination, or let's say in fantasies which a human might have, these archetypes are expressed, and they basically reveal the hidden truths which are there within the person. Now, these archetypes are unlearned. It is not something which we can learn consciously. It is something there within us innately. And therefore, these archetypes function to organize basically how we experience certain things in our lives. And they are reflected in various kinds of cultural icons. For example, in the kind of art that we see in our culture, which is common to even other cultures, which means certain kinds of myths, certain kinds of art forms, which we see across all cultures, are all expressions of these kinds of archetypes. So, archetypes play a very important and significant role in shaping an individual's personality. But according to Jung, most people are dominated by one or more specific archetypes. So there will be certain archetypes which are more important for certain individuals, while for other individuals, certain other archetypes will be more influential in determining their personality as well as their behavior. So, the actual way in which an archetype is expressed in a human being or in a behavior of a person will depend upon a number of factors. Of course, it is culturally influenced because the kind of norms which are present in a particular culture, whichever culture it might be, will shape the way these archetypes are expressed in different individuals. Also, the kind of personal experiences which are unique to every individual, the kind of personal experiences a person has is also going to affect the way the archetypes are realized or expressed in the person's behavior. And these archetypes, therefore, are the basis of many of the common themes and symbols that we see and which appear in all kinds of stories. So, stories which have come down the ages, or myths which have come down the ages, or the kind of dreams that people have. These are all some things which are expressions of archetypes, and these have come down through the ages, and they are similar across different cultures and different societies. Now, we are talking about specific archetypes. The first archetype that we will talk about is the persona. Now, the persona is like a social mask. Now, mask is something which is used to cover up. So, the persona represents all of the different social masks that we wear amongst various groups or in various situations. And all the roles that we play in different social situations are basically expressed or done through this kind of persona. So, persona is a mask that we wear. It basically is not the true person. We are projecting a kind of a personality. So, this protects the ego basically from any kind of negative perceptions or any kind of judgments from the kind of people whom we interact with. And this particular archetype, which is the persona, is shaped by the kind of societal expectation. So, if a society expects us to behave in a particular way, we do that. And that when we are doing that, basically we are influenced by the persona archetype. And these norms that this is the right behavior or this is the right behavior is based on the kind of norms that we have imbibed in us right from childhood. So, right from childhood, we are getting an understanding of what are the norms that the society expects us to follow. So this any individual or a person will develop this particular persona or this archetype of persona as a social mask to basically contain or to suppress all the primitive urges or all the primitive impulses and emotions that are not considered socially acceptable. So to keep all these urges under control, the persona archetype is expressed. And this basically facilitates how we fit in to and how we adapt to the existing world or the world that surrounds us. And sometimes, if this is taken too much to an extreme. Let's say if a person identifies too closely with this archetype of the persona, then the person will really lose sight of himself or herself. That means his or her true self will not be expressed. He is always or she is always going to be expressing the archetype of the persona, where it is a social mask based on how other people want him or her to behave. The next archetype is the shadow. Now, the shadow is something which obviously resides in the unconscious mind of the person, and it is composed of all the repressed ideas, all the weaknesses of the person, all the desires which maybe he cannot express, instincts, and all the shortcomings of the person. And the shadow basically forms out of our attempts to comply with cultural norms and expectations. So, there is a similarity to the archetype of persona here. So, whatever cultural norms are there, when we attempt to follow these norms or adapt our behavior to these norms, we are basically expressing this shadow archetype. So it contains all of the things that are unacceptable, not only to society, but also to even our own personal morals and values. So here is how the shadow archetype is different from the persona. Here, not only are we suppressing things which society doesn't find to be acceptable, we are also suppressing things which we ourselves would feel is morally wrong to engage in. So therefore, it will include things like envy, jealousy, prejudice, hate, aggression, all these kind of negative emotions, which even we know is not correct to engage in. As long as these instincts are there, they are just suppressed and it becomes an expression of the shadow archetype. Now, the shadow can appear in our dreams, as we've already talked about archetypes being expressed in dreams, or it could be in visions where the person just sees something in the mind's eye, and it may take a variety of forms. So, it might appear as a snake, a monster, a demon, or a dragon, or some other kind of dark, wild, or exotic figure. So, when these kind of elements are seen in dreams regularly, basically, it is an expression of all those suppressed things which is being expressed now by the shadow archetype. So, therefore, the shadow archetype is the darker side of the psyche, and it represents wildness, it represents chaos and the unknown. We really don't know what all is there included in this shadow archetype. And these latent dispositions, that means hidden dispositions, are present in all of us. So Jung believed that people sometimes deny this shadow archetype or this shadow element of their personality. They feel, no, everything I'm aware of, and there's nothing which I need to really suppress or repress, or something which I really don't want to accept. But they are projecting this kind of expression of the shadow archetype onto others. So I am perfect, I have no problem. These negative emotions are not there in me, it is in someone else. So basically, there is denial and there is projection, where we project what we are actually experiencing onto somebody else. We don't accept it in ourselves, but we feel that it is somebody else who's expressing all those negative emotions. Then we have the archetypes of the anima and the animus. These are coming together. So the anima is the feminine part of the male psyche, which is characterized by empathy, trust, intuition, and emotional connections with others. So though we have males and females with different kinds of personalities, within a male you will have the feminine part, which is the anima, and Vice versa, animus is the masculine part of the female psyche, which is associated with logical thinking, problem solving, or emotional stability, which are traditionally supposed to be male traits of the personality. Now, these archetypal images of the anima and the animus are based upon both what is found in the collective unconscious as well as the personal unconscious. So it is like an amalgam or a combination of what is there in a person's specific unconscious, that is personal unconscious, as well as the collective unconscious, which is common to entire humanity. So, according to Jung, basically the animus represents the masculine aspect that is often suppressed in women, and the anima represents the feminine aspect that is normally suppressed in men. So, it tries to seek expression, but normally we suppress it. So, Jung believed that the physiological changes as well as the social influences contribute to the development of our gender identity. So, the kind of gender identities we have is very largely related to what kind of social influences we have been exposed to, as well as, of course, the physiological and biological changes that every gender goes through. So, Jung suggested that the influence of the anima and the animus archetypes are also seen in the kind of gender development which is seen in various individuals. So, for example, with regard to the anima in men, the collective unconscious may contain notions about how women should behave, while the personal experience with the wives or the girlfriends or sisters or mothers contribute to more personal images of women. So it's a combination, and that will lead to what is present in the anima archetype for a male. Now, in the anima and the animus, according to Freud, they are the primary source of communication with the collective unconscious, which means these are very essential ways through which we connect to our personal as well as the collective unconscious. And men and women basically are normally in society encouraged to adopt very traditional roles. That is, the gender roles, that is what a woman should do or what a man should do, is normally specified by the norms of society. And these gender roles are very rigid and they're very compartmentalized. So Jung suggested that this discouragement of men exploring their feminine aspects or of women exploring their masculine aspects all has a very negative impact on psychological development. So if the anima and the animus was allowed to be expressed, it would lead to a better kind of all-round psychological development. So integrating both the feminine and masculine aspects of our personality into a very authentic, which is a very real and a very unified whole, is a healthy part of human development, which normally always doesn't happen. So, a good balance of the anima and the animus would be a person who relies on both emotion as well as logic and reasoning, relies on intuition, and also at the same time thinks through things logically, cooperation as well as competition. So, if this balance is there, that means both the anima and the animus are being expressed equally. Now, he used the term syzygy, the combined anima and animus, which is also called the divine couple. So when there is an optimum level of the anima and the animus and they combine together, it is called the syzygy or the divine couple. And this syzygy basically represents completion, unification, and wholeness. So the aim would be to attain this state which everybody may not possibly attain. The next archetype is the archetype of the self. And basically, he believed that the self strives for unity and for oneness. And for achieving this unity and to achieve this oneness, a person must be increasingly aware of what is the wisdom available not only in his personal unconscious but also in his collective unconscious. So until we know both of it, we cannot attain a holistic, or let's say a oneness in ourself. And therefore, the self is an archetype which represents the unified consciousness and the unconsciousness of an individual. So, not only are we aware of the unconscious part, which is a combination of the personal unconscious as well as the collective unconscious, we are also fully aware of our consciousness. So, it's a combination of knowing the entire unconscious as well as the entire consciousness. And this creating this self, therefore, occurs through a process which is known as individuation. Now, according to Jung, the first step towards individuation would be awareness. Awareness or recognition of the wisdom which is there in the personal and the collective unconscious. And then he talks about once we know the unconscious properly, we are aware of it fully, that is the personal as well as the collective unconscious, then the aim would be to integrate or harmonize the conscious elements and the unconscious elements together to achieve this unity and wholeness. And this in this process of harmonizing the conscious and the unconscious components of our personality, this will happen in different ways or unique ways for different individuals. The process will be more or less the same, but the specifics might differ. So, therefore, ultimate aim is to achieve individuation, which is a state of being a distinct individual separate from others. And when that happens, then we find the full expression of the self archetype. So Jung suggested that there were two different centers of personality. That is the ego, obviously, which makes up the center of consciousness, but it is the self that lies at the center of personality. So ego is there, the self is also there, but the self is basically more central to the concept of personality. So personality encompasses not only the consciousness, but also the ego as well as the unconscious mind. So he proposed imagining a circle with a dot right at the center. So if the entire circle is making up the self, that is the personality, the main part of the personality, the small dot in the center or the middle of that circle would be the ego. And this is how he talked about the self archetype as well as how it is important in the entire personality of the individual. So, since each archetype involves a lot of strong emotion, Jung believed that people's emotion generated behavior could often be explained by identifying the key archetype that was influencing them. So, in case if we find that a person's behavior is expressing a lot of strong emotions, then it would be used for analysis to find out which are the archetypes which are being expressed through this person's behavior. And that is done even sometimes in the process of therapy to find out if it is Jungian therapy, to find out which are the archetypes which are dominating in this person's behavior. And that is how that would be the starting point of therapy. So, according to Jung, a number of existing archetypes is not fixed. That means, though he talked about the persona, he talked about the anima, the animus, and the self, but he said that there is no static or fixed number of archetypes because many different archetypes may overlap with each other, they may combine with each other, and they can create new archetypes. For example, the archetype of the father. Now, this is a stern figure, an authority figure who is very powerful. Then we have the hero, which is a champion who defends. He's a defender and he's also possibly a rescuer in certain situations. And the trickster is a person who's a deceiver, a liar, and a troublemaker. So, along with these, he talked about the archetypes of the mother who is nurturing, comforting, the child who is longing for innocence, rebirth, and salvation, the wise old man whose main aim is guidance as well as knowledge and wisdom. The maiden, which signifies and symbolizes innocence, desire, and purity. So, combinations of basic archetypes can lead to multiple types of archetypes in various forms. So the answer to the question of the day is Dr. Ernest Dichter. Now, Dr. Ernest Dichter, a Viennese psychologist, he applied Jung's archetypal concepts to the field of marketing. And he created brand archetypes, for example, the hero, the rebel. And he found that these brands could adopt these archetypes to forge deeper emotional connections with the consumer. So, if according to him, if you want to connect to consumers, you have to create certain brand archetypes which will appeal to the basic emotions which each of these archetypes are evoking in the person. So he used to do his research by gathering small groups of individuals who are the target audience. That means the members who were typical of the audience whom you want the product to reach. And then he used to study them in detail to uncover their desires and their predispositions to a product or brand. So basically, he's trying to see what kind of archetypes are evoked in each of the individuals that will therefore decide how they react to that particular product. So he called these groups of people whom he studied as focus groups or his living laboratory. And he used a controlled environment to observe families interacting with various products and various commercials or advertisements. He used to even capture all of their reactions through hidden cameras as well as tape recorders. And in addition to this, he used to interview them, he used to assess their personality, he used to give them perception tests and observe them and do an in depth analysis. Now, one of the products that he was told to market was the Barbie doll. And Ruth Handler, who was the creator of the Barbie doll, she and the company, which is Mattel, which is of course also the creator of the Barbie doll, hired him, that is Ernst Dichter, and they told him to conduct market research and help to market this Barbie doll. Now, when Barbie debuted in the market, the wholesalers were very uncomfortable with this adult figure doll being marketed to children because she didn't look like a child. She looked like an adult woman. And when he did his studies with focus groups, with including mothers of children and even their daughters, he found a key insight. And that is that though children were very happy with the dolls, they were very enthusiastic about Barbie, the mothers were initially very resistant because they were also not sure whether an adult woman would be an appropriate figure for the child to play with. However, the mother's perception of the Barbie doll changed when they saw that their daughters had this desire to emulate or to follow this doll's well groomed appearance. So the appearance of the Barbie doll became something which was worth emulating and something which these girls looked up to and aspired to. So Dichter he helped Mattel understand that Barbie appealed to the mothers as an ideal representation of a feminine, well-kept woman, which was a very highly desirable trait in the 1950s. So subsequent advertising campaigns presented the Barbie as a symbol of what girls would grow up to, and this strategy dramatically increased sales. And of course, the rest is history, as we say. Today, Barbie has been popularized and it is an extremely popular doll with children all across the world. Again, coming back to Jung's theory, he proposed two attitudes or two approaches to life, and he called them extroversion and introversion. Now, extroversion is adopted by an individual who is what we call an extrovert. Now, what are the qualities or what are the features of a person who is an extrovert? This person is somebody who thrives in social settings. So you give them any social setting and they'll be very happy with it. They like group activities. They are very outgoing. They are very energetic. They are open, very confident. They do not feel very diffident in any kind of social settings. They can make friends very easily. They have multiple friends, in fact, and they enjoy high levels of stimulation, which means they actually thrive in environments where there's a lot of stimulation, a lot of interaction, and where there is a wide range of activities. And they actually feel energized by being very outgoing and being in a very social environment. If you compare this to what is introversion, so a person who is an introvert is almost the opposite. They enjoy solitary activities. That means activities where they alone are involved. They prefer deeper conversations with people. So they're not very interested in, being a social butterfly or just interacting for the sake of interacting in social settings. They are very reflective. They are very thoughtful. But they are also hesitant and they're very cautious, specifically in social situations, very quiet and reserved, and their energy is derived from the inner psychic activity. In fact, in social situations, they feel emotionally drained. So he was the first person to talk about these kinds of differences in personality based on certain traits and qualities. He also used certain techniques in the kind of therapy techniques that he proposed, and they are called the therapeutic techniques in Jungian psychology. First was, of course, dream analysis. This is something similar to what even Sigmund Freud proposed. And this involved interpreting the dreams of a person to uncover their unconscious thoughts and feelings. Because according to the hypothesis, whatever is there in our unconscious can only be expressed in dreams, for example, where we cannot control the content of the dreams, as well as we do not engage in any censorship by deciding the content of the dreams. And therefore, these reveal very deep insights into a person's psyche. He also used a particular method called the active imagination process. In the active imagination process, the individuals are told to basically engage with their inner symbols and the narrative. So it could include the personal unconscious as well as the collective unconscious. And the aim is to foster personal growth and self understanding. And of course, the journey of individuation, which is basically helping the person who's come for therapy integrate the conscious as well as the unconscious aspects of his or her personality, to embrace the strengths which he or she has as well as the weaknesses, and achieving a unique sense of self. So, what we have learned today is the collective unconscious, archetypes and its various forms, the Jungian concept of self, the process of individuation, the personality types of extroversion and introversion, and the therapeutic techniques in Jungian psychology. So, do like, share, and subscribe to Psychology with Dipali. Follow me on Instagram also with Psychology with Dipali, and let me know in the comments which parts of my video and which kind of videos you like. In case if there are any topics which you would like me to create videos on, do let me know in the comments. So till I bring the next video for you, it's all from my end. See you very soon.